As I had mentioned, we wanted to create some text on a path, and in this case I just brought in a scenic mountainous background, and I put my text on a path which follows pretty closely the the horizon line or the mountainous landscape in this picture. So again, you can see I picked a few key points and I've tweaked the path so it follows along that that horizon line. Had to play some games with the end point here, and you'll see later why. You don't want your letters to like run over top of this closer mountain, so I had to shorten it a little bit because the letter will kind of wrap right around the end of that last point on your path. But again, these are things you'll start to realize and start to play around with. I've also picked a font that works along with this a little bit. I tweaked around that just a little bit, and so I now have text on an image, and I have a path laid out for it. What we now want to do is go about editing some motion to this path. So currently I don't really have anything, I don't need anything selected. I like the path that I'm dealing with. You got to be careful with the font size and the spacing that goes along with each font. If your letters start running into each other or creating large gaps at those locations, those turning points, there are a few controls that you can have here. Well, line spacing is not necessarily it, but tracking will allow you to, the spacing between your letters, depending on how you wish to control that, and I don't really feel that I need to control that right now, can be increased or decreased slightly. So I'm leaving mine at 0, but if there's ever becomes a gap based on the path you've selected that you wish to close down or try to close down, tracking is one way to try and do that, to increase or decrease the space between your letters. But you can see as you get to the point of this mountain, you're going to get a break as those letters begin to change direction pretty quickly. So again, I got my path set up and I've got my text set up. Now I want to do is create some motion. So under the text format area, you want to come down to some advanced formatting, and what that's now looking at is the offset of your text, that text line. I don't feel the need to open this all the way up because we're only going to deal with the offset of the X value, and by scrolling this up and down and increasing and decreasing this value, you can see how well you now have this scrolling text that runs across that scenic landscape, and you can control the speed in this next couple steps as well. For now, I want to come back to a point where it starts out by actually saying scenic landscape. So I'm going to come back to where my S of scenic will first get cut off. So I'm at scenic landscape right now. It's all completely on, and that's just a start point that I'm going to use. I have 4.7 as that starting location that I currently like. To go through setting this motion up, you're going to have to go through the process of keyframing. And to some students, this may be new. If not, again, you should probably be able to fly right through this. First thing that I would do is, now that I'm keyed to my first location, make sure that your playhead is at your first frames. So if I can go back here to the very beginning. All right. I can now add a keyframe here. And that, in order to do that, there's this diamond with a little plus sign. If you pay attention to what's in that diamond, it'll give you some insight as to how it's working. So I'm going to hit add a keyframe. What that does is it locks these red values, these values you have set up, to that moment in your timeline. Any changes that you make to that timeline as we move forward, let's just say the very end here. If you crank, oops. Sorry, I should have added the keyframe first. I'm going to do that. Okay, so we currently have our first keyframe in, and if you go back to the very beginning, keyframe, that's taking you back to the first frame. If I go to the last frame, hopefully 300 shows up here. If I go to the last frame, I'm still at that same position, and you'll see that nothing has really, well, looks like the text ran out before it got to the last frame. But you get to the very end of this, and I want to add an additional keyframe. So I have 2 keyframes, very limited control here. Now that I've entered a second keyframe, I can now crank through this. And what did I do to the visibility here? But we'll take a look at it then. I'm going to crank this number up. Let's just make it. I'm going to play around here at 3,000. All right. Basically, we're sliding that start point over, and it's going to continue to cycle through as this plays. So I am not sure where. Okay, so you can see how this text, as it's moving from beginning to end, it has a constant speed from 0, or from the 4 starting point that we have selected, all the way up to 3,000. So it's going to roll through the movement of that text across the landscape. If you want to increase the speed of this, again, decrease the stopping number. Instead of being at 3,000, make it shorter, and again, it'll process through more quickly. So if you want to change that, you can go forward or back between the 2 keyframes. So if I'm at the last keyframe and I change this number to 1,500, which is